And now, our feature presentation.
Hi, everybody. Steve Willis, Steve Detterman with you. We are back, the WD60 podcast. It is Super Bowl Sunday. Steve, are you ready for some football?
I am ready, and it sounds like I woke you up too early this morning. We're doing this early so we can get it in, for one thing, and get it out there.
This is true.
But also, I have a tea time this morning yet.
Yes, Mr. I live in warm weather territory, and you get to go golfing in January and February. That is fantastic.
Yes, it is true.
Happy February.
And it's not even going to be the best day we've seen so far this winter. So
no,
it'll be nice to get out.
That's fantastic. And really, to be perfectly honest, around here in the northern Indiana area, we are going to have 50-degree weather for the Super Bowl, which is pretty unheard of. So that's pretty awesome, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's, February 50, what the heck is going on? But, hey, you got to take it. But I tell you, you've got to be one excited puppy right now.
Oh, I really am. The Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, anybody that's ever followed our shows will know that I am a die-hard Kansas City Chiefs fan. Excuse me.
Yes.
Yeah, I am a die-hard Kansas City Chiefs fan, and it has been a long time coming, and this is really great for me. But for the purposes of the show, I am going to try and be semi-impartial.
Let me be the impartial one. You be the homer this time. You deserve it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to be impartial at all. Regardless, we do have the Kansas City Chiefs going to the Super Bowl for the first time in 50 years. Yes. And on the other side, a team that is no stranger to winning Super Bowls, but they have not seen one since 2013, and that is the San Francisco 49ers. And wow, what a matchup. I really think, especially after a stinker of a Super Bowl last year, the NFL really got it right this year.
Oh, I agree. And, and you talk about, the San Francisco 49ers team getting to the Super Bowl. They've done nothing since 2013 except soak up no draft picks. So, I mean, for them to get back there this year, I mean, no one saw. I mean, I didn't see this coming. I knew they were going to be good this year, but I didn't expect what we saw this year of them.
Right.
Not at all.
And their defense, I think the thing that's the most greatly improved is their defense. Of course, Jimmy Garoppolo getting hurt last year really took a big toll on their offensive capability. But what Robert Saleh has done with that defense and made them just a monster up front with the addition of Bosa and being able to retool the way that they rush the passer and they play the run, they really are. They're phenomenal. And
they are. And as much as you love them or hate them, the addition of Richard Sherman to that defensive backfield, you talk about something that solidifies the backfield and brings that presence. He has done a tremendous job this year of helping, shore that up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, a lot of people complain about the way Richard Sherman plays his position. He doesn't travel much. He just kind of stays in his one little area. But, I mean, he still takes away half the field. Yeah. And he's a very smart player. I mean, he's not just fast. He's not just a ball hawk. He's not just a coverage guy. He is a very intelligent player, and he can create, in the defensive backfield, almost like a harmony just by communication. His skill set is between the ears.
Oh, yeah, and every single person that says, complains about Richard Sherman is the same person that would love to have him on their own team.
Oh, because I've said that about a lot of people, but that's very true about Richard Sherman.
Because he brings that to your team. He brings winning to your team. He brings toughness. He brings togetherness. I mean, he is definitely a huge impact on the defensive side of the ball.
And, of course, who else brings winning to that team? George Kittle. I mean, you want to talk about a tight end who has just completely blown up into an absolute dynamic player in every sense of the word. He can block, he can pass catch. When he gets the ball, look out, because he is not going to be an easy tackle. I mean, the guy is fantastic. I honestly think, as far as tight ends go in the NFL, we have the two best playing against each other.
I was just going to say that.
Travis Kelce.
Yep. I was just going to say that. I mean, this is the first time that I can remember in a Super Bowl that you have the tight ends of the capability of Kelce and Kittle on the same field at the same time. And both of these two dominated their leagues. I mean, just dominated as far as what they bring, as far as not only up front, but the receiving aspect, the breakaway, the big play. Both these guys do it, and they do it the best.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now let's kind of get into the meat of this game real quick. And I think the first thing that you're going to look at when you look at this matchup and you're trying to break it down, everybody goes for weaknesses. Obviously, it's the thing that you do when you're game playing against another team. What are the key weaknesses for these two teams? We'll start with, since we were talking about the 49ers, we'll start with the 49ers. What is the key weakness for the 49ers?
I look at this team and I try and find out what their weakness is. And, pass defense, no, they do a great job pass defense. Run defense, now and then they've been able to give up some running. They're quick to the outside. So, I mean, defense overall is solid. I mean, if anything, the run defense is something that, is it might be a little bit of an Achilles heel. On the offensive side, Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't had to pass the last two games. He hasn't. He literally has not had to do a thing. And, and they still steamrolled over both their opponents. So, I mean, on the offensive side, I don't know. You give me a pick. I mean, they block very well for Garoppolo when he needs to go back. Running the ball, they've done a tremendous job of creating a monster hole. On the other side, you take a look at Kansas City. I think the biggest thing that I've seen with Kansas City, the biggest weakness, is the beginning of the game. Are they going to be in it, right off the bat, or are they going to wait, 5-10 minutes? I mean, this is not a game that they can afford to fall behind early. And I think that's the biggest key that I'm looking at, and the biggest weakness is, how does Kansas City come out and start this game? If they start it like they did the last two games against Tennessee and who was the team they played before Tennessee? Houston. If they come out the way they started against those two teams, I'm not sure that they can come back this time. But they have the firepower and they play people that can do it. You just don't know if those other two defenses are anywhere near as stout and as good as the San Francisco defense.
I think when you're looking at weaknesses for me, the first thing I'm looking at is what historically, and by historically I mean this year, has been the one thing that people have kind of pigeonholed and said, this is the thing that you need to watch out for. For the 49ers, I think it's the ability to, every once in a while in a game, give you an opportunity to make a play defensively. Jimmy Garoppolo, a lot of the big knock on him is he's always good for one, and what that means is he'll throw one right to you on defense during the game if you're forcing him to throw. Now, it hasn't been the case in the playoffs because when you're throwing 8 attempts a game, you don't really have that opportunity. But if you're forcing them to throw, then he is good for occasionally throwing it right to a linebacker or a defensive back or something of the sort. So that would be really the only knock that I can see on the 49ers. But that is a situational thing. If they can run the ball 35 times a game, that no longer becomes a factor. So that's going to be a key to stopping them. You're going to have to get up on the run. For Kansas City, I definitely agree with you. on the starting fast. They cannot have a slow start because this defense is not going to be a defense that's going to let you come back and score 17, 21, 28 points in a row unanswered. So it's definitely not going to be a game where they can start slow and do this come from behind thing. However, they now have the confidence and they've shown that they can come back from almost a 30-point deficit. And so that is the confidence that they have. The biggest knock for Kansas City, I think, is really that slow start. But I think their special teams. Special teams has played a role in them getting behind in both games. You know, we've seen a blocked punt. We've seen a muffed punt at the 5-yard line. We've seen, you know, a couple of bad decisions to field a punt instead of letting it go into the end zone. So there, and trust me, Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, you put either of them back there to kick return or punt return, and they can immediately swing the game.
Oh yeah,
you know, but at the same time, we've seen, you know, issues out of this, and I love Dave Tobe, the special teams coordinator, and he's a fantastic coach. The unit has just been having problems in these playoffs, and if they do have these problems in the Super Bowl, I think that will be a major issue for Kansas City.
And I think one thing you brought up, Steve, you talked about the slow start both of us did, and you said, well, they've got the confidence now if they come back. The problem is there's that old saying, you don't want to go to the well too many times, and that's something you really don't want to play with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I really think, as far as Kansas City, they cannot afford to have a slow start.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I just really don't think this defense is one that's going to, really, break down like Houston or like Tennessee. I don't think those two defenses even come close to comparing with San Francisco.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
And I think the biggest thing maybe the thing we need to look at is not how do you combat the weaknesses, how do you combat the strengths of these teams, because each of these teams have specific strengths that are not just run of the mill. Hey, they're average at this. They're damn good at them.
Well, let's go ahead and let's dive into that just for a second.
Okay.
What are the strengths of the 49ers? The biggest strength, offensively and defensively.
Well, the biggest strength is that defensive front line, on the defense. That defensive front line attacking and just causing all kinds of havoc as you come up. I mean, they do a good job where they only have to rush 4. They rush 4 and they still put a ton of pressure on the quarterback. When they start bringing that 6th person, now it's just total chaos. And that's what they did to totally disrupt the Green Bay Packers when they played them and just destroy Minnesota when they played them. On the offensive side, I mean, here's a stat that I just looked at. For the playoffs, the San Francisco 49ers are averaging 331 yards per game. 235 of those yards are coming on the ground. So you're getting less than 100 yards passing per game, and they have destroyed both of their opponents. They destroyed. I mean, it wasn't close. The end of the Packer game got a little close, but that wasn't even a close game. And then on the other side with Kansas City, I mean, how do you not start with Patrick Mahomes? How do you not start with Patrick Mahomes and what he has done in his sophomore year as far as, lead that team, show the will and the resolve to bring that team back time and time again, but then also the speed that they have in those skilled players. Getting them to the outside and letting them run in space. So that it's amazing. Just it's fun. I go back to remember way back when I believe the Washington Redskins had the Smurfs. This is like that. You just put them out there in the open and let them run. They're not big guys. They just go out there and they scoot. They find that opening, and before you know it, whoo, they're by you.
And their speed is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, when Sammy Watkins is your third best wide receiver, that is absolutely ridiculous.
But I think that's. I mean, when you look at the strengths and everything else, I would say, hey, let's look at the tight ends. But these are two very evenly matched tight ends, and they are both the best tight ends in football. Hands down.
Absolutely, yeah. In their respective conferences,
we can't do that
completely.
Yeah. If you look at Mahomes, you look at Garoppolo. Mahomes, I put him, head and shoulders above Garoppolo. But all Garoppolo does is he does the Tom Brady thing. He wins.
Yeah.
They were a winning team before he got hurt last year. Now look what he did this year.
Yeah, and he had a chance to take notes and sit behind Tom Brady and watch what Tom Brady can do.
Yeah.
Throughout the playoffs.
And the one time. And the one time he got that
chance.
opportunity at New England, he took advantage of it and won there too.
Absolutely. The one thing that you didn't touch on was the defensive strengths for Kansas City. And, it's funny because when you looked at the Kansas City Chiefs defense, of course, last year, everybody knows they were one of the worst defenses in the NFL. The beginning of the year, they looked like it was going to be more of the same out of that defense. And Steve Spagnuolo was quoted in training camp when asked about this defense. He said, they're going to be good. He said, but we're going to really see what this defense can do about week 7 or 8. And boy, was he right, because after the bye week, which was actually week 12, since the bye week, they've allowed 15.1 points per game. That is the best in the NFL. They have stopped the run. They have not allowed a 100-yard rusher since the bye week, week 12. They have stopped some of the best rushing attacks in the NFL in the playoffs out of a quarterback in Deshaun Watson that can beat you with his feet. And then, of course, Derrick Henry holding him to less than 70 yards. It was amazing to see what that front seven can do for Kansas City. And they did that to Derrick Henry with Chris Jones only playing 6 snaps or 7 snaps.
But the one thing I'll take a look.
They have definitely improved.
But Steve, I'll tell you this. I thought Tennessee abandoned the run a lot earlier than what they should have.
Oh, they definitely did.
And they went to the pass, and I couldn't understand going to the pass.
They definitely did, but at the same time, and let me interrupt you for a second.
Okay.
They did abandon the run, but at the same time, that, I believe, was by design from Kansas City. They stopped the run early and forced Tennessee to throw the ball because, of course, Kansas City ended up, they started down 10 points, but by the time they got into the second half, Kansas City was leading by 10 points. So we're looking at, I think it was almost like a 21 or 28 point swing. And that forced Tennessee to get out of their normal game plan. Yeah, they got away from Derrick Henry, but at the same time, Derrick Henry. If you look at effectiveness, running effectiveness, you normally look at yards per carry. Derrick Henry was averaging 5.6 yards per carry going into that game. The Kansas City game, 3.1 yards per carry.
Okay.
So they definitely were effective when Derrick Henry got the ball.
But when you have a big time running back like that, the way I look at beating Kansas City is you slow that damn game down. If you get into a track race with them, you're not going to win. And the problem is Tennessee got sucked into a track meet, and they forgot that their big horse was in the backfield, and they didn't use him.
They did, but then they didn't at the same time, because if you notice the second half, Kansas City did what Tennessee should have done. Kansas City had now. Here's Kansas City's drives throughout the year: 3 minutes, 2 minutes, minute and a half.
Oh yeah,
minute 45. Here was the drive in the second half of the AFC Championship game: 8.5 minutes, 6.5 minutes. Come on. Kansas City does not play ball control offense like that.
Kansas City
did it against Tennessee.
They did exactly what Tennessee should have done. And the thing is that I think that's where you look at that strength of Mahomes. It freaks the heck out of the defensive side on the other team, because they're all worried about stopping that pass, or worried, oh my God, they're going to score quick. we have to do the same thing. We can't afford to do this. And they get out of their game plan. It's going to be interesting to see if this 49ers team that, ran for, 235 yards, they're averaging 235 yards a game on the ground, what they do against Kansas City's front.
Yeah,
If they have that type of control up front, it's going to be a long game for Kansas City because they're not going to have the opportunities that they've had in some of these other games.
Well, one of the interesting things that San Francisco does when running the ball is it's a unique thing, and it's actually very similar to the way Kansas City does it. They don't come at you straightforward. It's not Tennessee where you're handing a guy the ball and saying, "Here's the gap, here's where we're running, come stop us." No, what San Francisco does is they disguise their run plays. They have you shifting one way, they run the other. They use a lot of counters, a lot of stretches, a lot of things to get you out of position, so then they can create those gaps and run the ball. Now that tells me two things. Number one, it tells me they're trying to keep as many people away from the ball carrier as much as possible before he gets out of the backfield, which is kind of that's indicative of also saying we're not sure that he's going to be able to push through that second level, so we're going to try and move everybody out of the way. Now that could be by design, or it could be a little bit of the fact that their running backs, if they take that hit and yards after contact is not very high. Now,
right.
Also, that can be a smart thing too by saying, look, we're going to distract the rest of the field. We're going to get you more one-on-one with a corner or one-on-one with a safety, and you go make a play, kid. And after that, you can run the ball 70 yards down the field. And so, I mean, there's a method to the madness, but at the same time, if you're going up against a defensive backfield like Kansas City's, and you've got really smart players back there, guys like Tyrann Mathieu, who can see these plays. They can see this play action, read it well, and they can react to it. That's going to be the thing Kansas City is going to need to do to stop that running game, to shut it down, is to be able to read and react to it, and don't get lulled into this sense of, oh, hey, everybody's going left. Now all of a sudden the running back's going through the cutback lane out to the right, and he's gone. No, they're going to have to maintain their spots. You just gotta play your spot. You gotta play your position, and hold where you need to hold. And that's exactly what the Chiefs are going to have to do to shut down that run game. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see that matchup. That's going to be a very good matchup because, like I said, the Chiefs all of a sudden know how to stop the run, but are they going to be able to stop this kind of run? This kind of run that's very well masked, and it's going to be a great challenge. It really will. Okay.
Well, you've also got a great front line for San Francisco leading that charge.
Oh, they do.
They do a tremendous job. I mean, they all know their assignments and they do it well, and that's right. I'm really curious to see how it goes, and I'm kind of wondering if San Francisco doesn't come out and instead of running the ball right away, starts throwing some quick hits. Start getting Kittle involved in the game early.
I would not be the least bit surprised. I really wouldn't. Now, we're going to give our predictions at the end of the podcast. So we're going to move forward. Instead of talking about the nuts and bolts of the game, I want to talk about a little bit of the periphery, because there has been a lot said about this game from a lot of different people. The one thing that I've seen that's gotten a lot of Kansas City Chiefs fans incensed, which I was one of them too, was, did you see Mike Florio's comments about hitting Patrick Mahomes?
Yes. What is with that?
You
need to go out and hurt him. Take him out. What?
If you haven't heard, Mike Florio was on a show shortly after the AFC and NFC championship games, breaking down the Super Bowl matchup, and in his comments, one of his comments, he had read, even if it's a penalty, when Patrick Mahomes is running out of bounds or starts into his slide, I would
Take
hit him. I would take the hit and send a message, even if it's a 15-yard penalty or half the distance to the goal. Okay, what you are literally saying is I am going to go after a quarterback and create a penalty. I'm going to try and hurt my team just to try and hurt this quarterback and try and get into his head and potentially hurt him. Because the reason why those penalties are there is for player protection, player safety.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, this is like, going back to, you go, hey, Mike Florio, are you part of the New Orleans Saints? Remember when the Saints had that bounty on Brett Favre?
Yeah, that was exactly the way I looked at it too. It was nothing more than an extension of bounty.
And they just sat there and they did late hit after late hit after cheap hit after cheap hit, and it sullied that whole game. Right. And they eventually got fined, and some people were taken out of football for a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah. I take a look at these comments, and to me, let's take Mike Florio out of football for a little bit. Let's take him out of the announcing game, because that's totally irresponsible. I mean, that's instigated. I mean, yes, the idea of a football game is you want to make a hard hit on the opposing player, but you want to make sure you're doing it clean. These guys all, respect each other and respect their bodies and know that they only have a certain time on the field.
Right.
And, if you think that, and there are some stupid players out there that will do the cheap shots, that will do this on a continuous basis. Vontae is perfect, for one. Didn't say that real loud, but he is one of the biggest cheap shot artists out there.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
He is someone that should no longer be in the game.
I still say he's the reason why Antonio Brown is not in the game right now.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I can go all conspiracy theorist on this, but I think Antonio Brown's suffering from some form of CTE, and I think it has to do with getting nailed by Vontaze Burfict twice a year.
Oh yeah,
when he was with the Steelers.
But I mean, getting back to this, I mean, you do not do. I mean, it's an unwritten rule. You want to hit someone and you want to cause them pain, but you want it to be legal. You do never want to hit someone illegally.
Right. You want to do it the right way.
Yeah, I don't want to be known as the guy that took Patrick Mahomes out of the game because I did a cheap shot on him.
Yeah, and Mike Florio has received he received so much backlash from those comments. He actually took to Twitter and defended his comments. He kind of, in a way,
how do you defend him?
Oh, it's absolutely ridiculous. You'd have to go read his Twitter to see it all, but. He basically goes on to try and explain himself as he didn't mean to hurt a player. He didn't mean to call out hurting a player. He meant to say, and he tries to break it down with semantics about, starting into a slide, not going out of bounds, but going towards the sidelines.
Let me go ahead and grab
blah.
the foot from the hip out of my mouth and see if I can pull it.
Yeah, exactly. And he's been lambasted for the last week, and it's been
and he should
hilarious.
Be. I mean, that is, it's a horrible comment. Even made in jest. And the thing is, he didn't make it in jest. He made that as a serious comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was, you just look at it, you just shake your head and you go, my God, really? Your strategy for winning this game is by purposely going out and hurting a player.
Yeah, it was honestly one of the most dumbass things to ever come out of anybody's mouth. God. It really was. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was to the point to where NBC Sports, how they're allowing him to talk about sports anymore, at least for a while, is beyond me.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy.
Oh yeah.
So, and anyhow, moving on from there, I do want to take a moment when we're, since we're about the halfway point of the show, I want to take a moment. This week, Super Bowl week, started with all kinds of glamour, all kinds of pomp and circumstance. It also kind of started with a heavy heart across the sports world. And, of course, I'm sure you've heard by now, regardless of how much sports you listen to, Sunday morning we woke up to the tragedy of a helicopter going down in California, and on that helicopter were 9 people, 2 of which being Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gigi. And of course, Kobe, there's not enough that could be said about how big he affected the NBA, how he affected lives in the NBA and the stars that are playing now, and that is, in my opinion, that is small compared to all the lives that he's affected throughout the world through his charities, through his philanthropy work outside of the game of basketball. And it was devastating, to say the least. In fact, the NBA, the Los Angeles Lakers ended up postponing one of their games. They got back to the court, a beautiful ceremony at Staples Center after taking a game off.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
They even, what was it? The Clippers even did something beautiful. They ended up leaving the seats, 2 seats at courtside, empty. It was actually the seats that Kobe and Gianna sat in the last game that they were at Staples, and laid a couple of flowers on there. And I'm not, I'm going to focus on those two because this is a sports talk show, but there were 7 other lives lost in that tragedy.
Yes.
And now that the names have come out, of course, there are memorial services being done for all 9, passengers on that helicopter. And we don't have any more answers, really. I mean, the investigation's going on as to why it went down, why they were flying in the fog that even the police helicopters weren't flying in, and so on and so forth. But for right now, I just kind of want to focus on Kobe and Gianna, and she was a budding basketball talent too.
Yes.
So that would have been, it would have been great to see what her career would have weaved itself into, especially now that the WNBA has picked up traction, and there is a place for women's basketball in the world now, whereas 25 years ago when Kobe was first starting into basketball, we wouldn't have said that same thing. So that is a great tragedy for the basketball world. Now, Kobe, I've decided that when we got to it's hard to pick my words here. When we talk about Kobe, we talk about him versus, say, LeBron versus Jordan versus X, Y, and Z. One of the last things that Kobe Bryant did, and of course he didn't know this was going to be one of the last things. Nobody knew this was going to be one of the last things he did. But when LeBron James passed him on the all-time scoring list, Kobe, the very first thing he does is congratulate LeBron, speak with him, talk about how great he was. And that got me thinking about this. And this may be slightly emotionally charged, but I don't care. We always have these conversations about who's the greatest of all time. LeBron, Kobe, Jordan, Iverson. Not anymore. I officially am done with doing this. I am done with the argument. I am done with the conversation of who is the greatest of all time. All of these guys, in their own time, were the greatest at their sport. Jordan was the greatest through the 80s. Kobe was the greatest through the 90s. LeBron is the greatest through the thousands. We need to just let that go. And I think I have chosen, we are no longer going to debate that. I am no longer going to get involved in that debate. So I'm done with it. These guys show so much respect to one another, and I know we always like to. I mean, this is what we do. We pit one against the other, and we create all this hyperbole.
And Steve, I understand. As long as you keep score and as long as you keep statistics, everybody's going to say, this was my player. And you can go back and you can say Bill Russell, how many titles did he win? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, what he did.
Right.
You can just go on and on about the players. Larry Bird. Right. Magic Johnson. I mean, there are just a ton of players out there that in their time, they were the greatest of all time.
Right.
You know very well. I'm not a big NBA fan.
Right.
As far as basketball, not a big fan at all. I was not a big Kobe basketball fan. As a person, that's a different story. I hate things like this. I'm out eating breakfast late breakfast with my wife, my sister, her husband, and my son texts me and says, "Hey, did you hear this?" And instantly I look up, and we're in a place that has the TVs and everything. We look up, and all of a sudden there it is scrolling along the bottom line, and you just go, "Oh my God!" And it's one of those things. You go, this is a person everybody knows. It's like you know where you were when this happened. It's like I know where I was when Magic Johnson announced that he had AIDS.
Right.
Things like that you just don't forget. This is something that it's just horrific, and the horrific thing is that there were 8 other people, and that his daughter was involved, and I just can't imagine the tragedy. I can't imagine how his family, how his wife Vanessa and their family is coping with this. Not only did you lose your husband, you lost your daughter as well, and the thing is that. You know that she was not going to get any rest. You're going to have reporters all over it. They're all going to want a statement. They're going to want this. The opportunity to grieve just isn't there, and that's the one thing that just really strikes me and just really irritates me the most is that when something like this happens, especially to someone as well known as that, the opportunity to grieve for the family just is not available, and that's just it's just horrible, and that's what I went through this week. Not so fact that hey, his sports history is going to stay there. His stats, his legacy, and everything's going to stay there. But the thing that comes down to is a father and a daughter are no longer there, and that family is not going to be given the opportunity to grieve.
Right, and I actually am. When you think about something like that, I'm glad Vanessa, as successful as what she is in her own right. She's not Kobe Bryant. She's not in the public eye constantly. She will be for a while, but I'm confident that at some point she will have that chance to sit down and grieve, and I really hope she does. I pray that she does, because she's lost, like you said, she's lost a daughter. And that I couldn't imagine. Having to bury one of my kids.
Both of us have kids. I can't imagine doing that. I don't want to imagine doing that.
Right.
And for her to have to do that in such a public eye, to me, it's heartbreaking. It really is.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And yeah, the old adage, you should never have to bury your children. Well, this is one of those cases where she's going to have to, and it's going to be a horrible. A horrible moment when she has to sit down and finally that decompresses and she realizes that. So anyhow, our obviously our thoughts, prayers, and whatnot to the families, all of the families. And yeah, I think in the sports world, this goes right along with that Magic Johnson, AIDS moment when you realized, or the plane crash that took out the entire Marshall. The
other
team.
things. Thurman Munson going down, Payne Stewart in the airplane.
Yeah.
There are different things that you remember. That tragedy strikes. These athletes, and these athletes they become heroes to us.
Right.
They become people that we look at and so forth, and we live our sports lives through them. We live our entertainment lives through them. And is that right? Well, no, but it's an escape, and it's a fun escape. It's something to get away and just be able to just be something else.
Yeah, with as crazy as what the real world is, it is. Yeah. This is our getaway from the real world.
Our getaway is to soak ourselves, you and me, especially being sports fan, is to soak ourselves up in these athletes and take on what they do on the field and live that. And when you have something like that taken away, it's just, it's just shock. It's just you just can't believe it. And something as tragic at this, at a young age, at just a horrible situation, it resonates that much more with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with that, we'll move on from there. But I had to mention, we would be remiss if we didn't mention it. We did decide that we had talked on Sunday, and at first I was all gung-ho to go ahead and throw a whole podcast together on it, and I was like, well, you know what? We're going to give it time to breathe. Everybody had talked about it, but we decided to give it time to breathe. So I'm kind of glad we did it this way, too. So
yes,
I think looking
I agree.
back, we'll be happier that we did it this way. But yes, much like for those of you not in the sports world, you remember where you were when 9/11 happened. You remember where you were when the Challenger went down. You remember where you were when you heard JFK was shot. Well, we're all going to remember in the sports world where we were when we found out Kobe Bryant went down in a helicopter crash. So that's kind of the way I would sum it up for those of you that aren't the biggest sports fans and you just don't get why this moment is big. That's the iconic moment for everybody. So, all right, back to the task at hand, the Super Bowl. So Vegas has, and they have the entire week. They've had the Kansas City Chiefs as a 1.5 point favorite. The Chiefs are the home team, but that really means nothing being in a neutral field. Yeah, being in Miami. But boy, I'm gonna tell you what, I've been watching NFL Network. And both teams travel well, but I think the Chiefs' kingdom has traveled very well. I mean, it is pretty impressive.
This is new territory for most of them, Steve.
Yeah, it really is. Well, it is for me.
Territory.
It is for me. I mean, when I'm 40, I'm going to be 43 this year. Yeah, 43. Yeah. Took me a minute, but.
That's age catching up with you.
Yeah, 43 or 44, something like that. But anyways, this is going to be the first time. The last time the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl, I was still 6 years from being born.
Right.
Because it was 1970. I was born in 76. So it's, that is a long ways away for me. I've never seen it. So it is huge. Now, San Francisco 49ers fans, unless you're, a 10-year-old or something like that, you're going to remember the last time the 49ers were in the Super Bowl. Now, of course, unless you're like 20, 25, you're not going to remember the last time they won one, but you've at least seen them there.
Right.
And for what a lot of people, what a lot of analysts and former players and stuff like that have said, it's almost more stressful watching them win the championship game to get to the Super Bowl than it is watching your team in the Super Bowl. And, I kind of feel that now. I feel the same way because to me, watching Kansas City get into the Super Bowl did not feel as stressful as what these last 2 weeks have felt. I kind of felt like, and now mind you, I want to see them win, but I kind of feel like even if they didn't win, I wouldn't have taken it as hard as if they lost the AFC Championship to Tennessee. Now, does that make any sense to you at all? I know you've been able to watch Green Bay go to the Super Bowl and win it.
Yes.
You've got to watch them go to the Super Bowl and lose it too, right? Am I right? Yeah, I don't.
I did.
Yeah.
I was around for the first two Super Bowls. I go back a little bit further than you.
Right.
I was a very young boy, and grew up. My dad and mom were big Packer fans, and we got to watch it. You didn't realize what you were watching back then because it was. It isn't like it is today. It's not the huge thing that it is.
Yeah, it's much more of a spectacle now.
And the long wait between those first two to when Brett Favre took him back, against New England.
Right.
It was such a long time, and you sat there and you suffered every single season. You'd get close, but then there were so many horrible years in between. And then when you start seeing it and you get there, the excitement just it's unbelievable. And you just go, you know what? I'm just glad that I can sit here on this last day of NFL football, and I can see my team still playing.
All right, and now that said, the Green Bay Packers have lost NFC Championship games as well.
I watched them lose against Denver in the Super Bowl, and that was the year after they won. And it was a game in which you sat there and you get involved with, and when they lose, it hurts, but you still get to the point and said, you know what, we got there though. And then the biggest thing that hits you at that point, Steve, and this is what you'll find out, is even after you win, is that can we put it together again? Can the team put it together again to get there another time?
You know what's funny? I'm already thinking about that. I really am. I'm already thinking about. Are they going to have an opportunity to do this again?
Yeah, I mean, I watched the Packers back in 2011, and I'm looking up here on my wall, and I got a picture of me and my son, posing in our Packer regalia and everything else. My son with a big cheese head on his head, Super Bowl 2011. At that time, I mean, if you think back, 8-9 years ago with Aaron Rodgers, who would have thought that he wouldn't be back to another Super Bowl by now?
Right.
They won 15. Yeah, they won 15-1 the one season. They get in the playoffs. They have their bye week, come back and lose the next week. You don't know what's going to happen, and that's the thing.
That's
Kansas
the old
City
adage.
Can have this.
That's the old.
Kansas City have this.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, I said Kansas City can go through and come in and win this game, but that does not guarantee that they're going to be back next year or the year after that.
Well, the great example of that is Dan Marino. Dan Marino went to one Super Bowl very early on in his career, and you think, oh, well, he's gonna go to the Super Bowl, 5, 6, 7 times. Well, unfortunately, there was this team in Buffalo that was so good that they kept going to the Super Bowl every year, and that really put a hurt on Dan Marino's chances of making it. So you just never know. Never know.
It's things like that, Steve, that you sit there and you sit back and you really respect and you really think about what the New England Patriots have done and how many times they got back. Or even Buffalo. Buffalo didn't win, but they got back 4 consecutive years. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's it's pretty crazy.
Everybody goes, "Oh, Buffalo," blah blah blah. That was a damn good team. I put that team up against anyone because you know what? They got there 4 times.
Oh, I'll tell you what, the best Kansas City Chiefs team I have seen in my lifetime, before probably this year, was the '93 Kansas City Chiefs, and I remember that AFC Championship game.
And that was with Joe Montana,
to the Buffalo
right?
Bills. That was Joe Montana, and that was Keith Cash with the blocked punt, and it looked like everything was going our way. And next thing you know, Bruce Smith comes along, hits Joe Montana, fumble, and we lose the football, and we end up, we started out 14-7. Next thing you know, we're down. And we lose the game 31-13 or 31-14 or whatever it was.
Right.
So I mean, it was, believe me, I've had my share of tough games. Lynn Elliott missing 3 field goals. I've losing the AFC Championship game last year by 4 inches of D Ford being offsides. Hosting Tennessee a couple of years back and them just absolutely beating us up in our own stadium. Yeah. So
that's what I'm going to say, Steve. Enjoy this. Enjoy every single minute of it. Relive it. Just soak it all up because it's something that I'm waiting for the Packers to get back again. Did I when we talked about our predictions for the games last week, I couldn't pick Green Bay. I told you my heart picks Green Bay, but San Francisco's the team that's going to win, and they did.
Right.
And but the thing is I like the progress, and I loved every minute of this year. But now it's a matter of I didn't get there. At this point, for you, enjoy it, soak it in. I mean, everything out there is all the Super Bowl stuff you can get. The shirt, the hat, and everything. Get it all.
Oh, I've already got my Patrick Mahomes baseball style T-shirt already.
Oh yeah,
I picked that up the other day.
Thing, but that's the thing about this game is that it is something where you aren't guaranteed anything, and like I said, to see what New England did over this last decade, I don't think of another team that did that, except when you go back in the day when the Packers were huge, when the Bears dominated for, these older teams dominated for decades.
Right. Oh, I don't think it's ever going to be replicated what the New England Patriots did. I think it's over. I think that's done now. But I don't think what they have done. I think it's done under the current realm. Yes, I do. Yeah, and so it'll be tough to replicate even a portion of that, much less the entire thing. So hats off to them. But currently, Chiefs, 49ers, Super Bowl. It is about that time. We're getting ready to wrap up the podcast, so it's time to make our official predictions. So, Steve, take it away. What's your official prediction for the game?
And unfortunately, Steve, I'm going to disappoint you, because the way I look at this game, I just think that defensive front, I think the total defense, and I think the biggest thing is that, what I look at, I think the biggest factor they're going to be on that side, I think, is going to be Richard Sherman taking away a half of the field to Patrick Mahomes. And I do believe that the San Francisco 49ers are going to come out and they're going to throw some quick hitters to Kittle. They're going to get him involved. They're going to get Emmanuel Sanders involved. And then they're going to run the ball, and I think they're going to run it very, very well. I just watching this team over the last couple of games just manhandle. They didn't have to really exert themselves or really, push as hard as Kansas City had to. And I think that's going to show. I think they're going to be a little bit fresher. I know they both had that week off, but I think it's going to be a little bit fresher. I just think that the defense itself is going to hold. I'm still looking for some points to go up. I'm looking 28-24 San Francisco.
All right. And I think the way I'm seeing this game, with everything Kansas City has done this year, and what they've come back from, Patrick Mahomes and the knee injury, the ankle injury in week 1, losing Tyreek Hill early on in the year, the defense having to get gelled together, Frank Clark literally playing with a neck injury until the bye week, losing Chris Jones late in the year and having to fill in for him. There has been so much adversity that the Chiefs have had throughout the regular season, and then to go into the playoffs, and they had to come back from 28 points. They had to come back from 10 points in 2 different games against 2 teams that had already beaten them. It almost feels like, and I know this is going to sound weird, but it almost feels like a team of destiny kind of situation for Kansas City and for Andy Reid. And the one thing that I have always said, if you go into something and you do it just for you, it's easier to give up than if you're doing it for somebody else. And if you ask any of these Kansas City Chiefs members, they have said all week, we want to win this for Andy. We want to win this for Andy Reid. And I kind of feel like, the 49ers want to win this too. They want to win it for themselves. And of course, San Francisco and all that. But the Chiefs are so emotionally involved in this that they have all said, like I said, Patrick Mahomes, you could hear Travis say it, you could hear Tyron say it, we want to win this for Andy. I feel like the Kansas City Chiefs are going to find a way to get this done. I think the defense is going to step up big against that running game. I think Tyrann Mathieu is going to step up big, much like Richard Sherman will step up big. And I think this is going to be a play here, a play there, and Kansas City Chiefs are going to come away with their first Super Bowl in 50 years. And I have the Chiefs winning 31-28, Kansas City.
See, and I'll be honest with you, I hope you're right. Because my heart would love to see Kansas City win. Love to see it for a team that hasn't been there for so long, but also for Andy Reid that has toiled and toiled and toiled. And it's just, he's done everything but win that big game. I'd love to see it. My heart says Kansas City, but my head just honestly just says San Francisco at this point.
Yeah, and I'm going to be perfectly honest. If San Francisco wins this game, I would not be surprised. I'll be disappointed, but not that much because I know how great they are. But at the same time, I just can't get past this feeling like the Chiefs are just a team of destiny.
Soak it up, buddy.
Yep. All right. Well, anyhow, with that, we're going to turn you loose. Hopefully you're listening to this on Super Bowl Sunday morning, and you can enjoy the game shortly after. We will talk to you next time. For Steve Detterman, this is Steve Willis signing off. You guys enjoy the Super Bowl and enjoy the rest of your day.